India have lost just one match in the past three ICC white ball tournaments. That's 23 wins out of 24, which is an astonishing achievement, but maybe forgotten because of the recent poor form in test matches. But the latest feather in the cap is the ICC Champions Trophy, which they've now won for the third time. And they've, in doing so, assembled a near perfect team in both T20Is and ODIs. Now, as we know that there's always going to be these asterisks attached to this win because of the scheduling issues and the fact that India only played in Dubai. But as we've said before, that is no fault of the players. They played wonderful cricket and they truly deserve the trophy. And the fact that they've done it against the bogey team New Zealand would be extra satisfying for the team. So what did you make of that final and India's campaign as a whole?
Well, the final turned out to be a humdinger, much against what it was expected, especially after the way New Zealand posted what was actually a modest score of 251, which on that pitch actually gave the bowlers some chance to defend. And of course, New Zealand played with a very big heart, with a lot of grit and determination, ran India really close. I mean, if they had scored about 20-25 runs more, it could have been even tougher. It could have been even closer. So it at the halfway stage, when the first innings had got over, it looked like it would be a one-sided contest. India would win in a canter. That didn't happen. So in that sense, the tournament got the final it deserved. And of course, India, by virtue of having remained unbeaten throughout, and frankly, the best team in the tournament, they went on to win the title. But kudos to New Zealand for running India so close. I mean, I think that sometimes it's forgotten how much effort goes into competing with this Indian team in white ball cricket. And therefore, I think one must acknowledge New Zealand's really determined push to get this one title. They've been missing this ICC for a long time. I mean, they've won it once, but for a long time they've been missing an ICC white ball tournament for maybe a couple of decades now.
Yeah, and as Virat Kohli mentioned after the match, he said that this New Zealand team, despite its limited resources, they are perhaps the best team in executing a plan, which they always do. You rarely see New Zealand have a freaky game or a really bad game. They are always calculative and they do what they plan to do. It's just that their skill perhaps wasn't matched to that of India. And speaking of India throughout the tournament, this has been a collective effort, right from Virat Kohli's brilliance in chasing the spin quartet and especially Varun Chakravarti's brilliance. He was brought in after a couple of games into the tournament. From Akshar at 5, new position, Rohit's captaincy, the Shubman Gill at the top, the consistency showed by Shreyas Iyer and KL Rahul. And remember, they did all of this without Jasprit Bumrah. So, who were your standouts of the tournament?
I mean, difficult to pick out one, isn't it? There's not a single failure in all the 11 players or 12 players who played. Harshit Rana played one match. He actually also picked up wickets. Mohammad Shami made a splendid comeback. Runs for Shubman Gill, who was short of runs. So too for Virat Kohli and for Rohit Sharma. And of course, the all-rounders, Shreyas Iyer coming into his own. I thought he was a very important figure there. KL Rahul, who a lot of people thought maybe shouldn't have been in the team ahead of Rishabh Pant, but look at the contributions he's made, and then the all-rounders, Hardik and Akshar, and so I mean, it's in Jadeja. So in a sense, what I wanted to highlight, Anirudh, is to pick one, it would have to be Varun Chakravarti. Last-minute addition, therefore, so much more pressure on him, and in a sense, this was like a make or break competition or a series for him. Had he not done well here, his place or for to acknowledge him as part of the ODI team or the 50-over team would have been maybe that would be the last we heard of him. So he's done extremely well to pick up 9 wickets. But when you look at how India succeeded, I think there's so much being made of the fact that they played all their matches in Dubai, and that let's accept it that it was an advantage of sorts. But there were other crucial factors which contributed to India's win. Let me name a few. The inspired inclusion of Varun Chakravarti, last minute addition, and look what has happened. He just transformed India's fortunes from the time he got into bowl. Then you look at KL Rahul being preferred over Pant. Pant is, everybody knows, maverick, match-winning batsman, wicket-keeper. In many ways, for many people, the first choice wicket-keeper batsman. And in a format which actually lends itself to his kind of stroke play, but they chose the more solid, the more reliable, the more experienced KL Rahul. And that paid dividends because Rahul's temperament came good when it mattered most for India. He guided India through some difficult passages, in the matches which India ran close. So Mohammad Shami, of course, proving his fitness and his class and caliber there. I think also inspired captaincy, the captaincy of Rohit Sharma. The thing is, when you have, so much was made of these pitches which were turning tracks and all that and helping the spinners, yes, but this didn't stop other teams from making selections which were as wise or as well thought out as India's. And then there is the challenge that when you have a pitch where you've got so much turn and assistance available to the spinners and you're playing four of them, who to bring on when? What is the field you set for them? It requires a lot of, dynamic thinking on the field, which I thought Rohit handled marvelously. So a lot of talk about, look, India had all the advantage. They came with a load full of spinners. I think for countries like Australia, they were short of their class players. So you can say, okay, fine, they were on the back foot. England really came with one specialist spinner in Adil Rashid. Pakistan, one specialist spinner in Abrar Ahmed. Bangladesh, really not, apart from Mehdi Hassan, there didn't seem to be anybody else who was a mainline spinner who could pick up wickets. So the fault was more in the others. And look at the margins of victory and the consistency with which India performed. I'm not even mentioning Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma as batsmen here. So overall, it's been a fantastic campaign from the selection to the execution.
Yeah, looking ahead, Rohit Sharma did say that he's not retiring from the format, and we have no news about Virat Kohli or Ravindra Jadeja. But do you think, given the form and the goodwill, the BCCI and team management will be tempted to keep this team around till 2027?
I mean, it's very difficult for a player, when so much is thrust on the player's plate and you take a call. He's just won a tournament. He's made a match-winning knock. He's man of the match. Should he retire at that point in time? I think it's very different from T20, where the challenges on the body and the mind in terms of temperament are very different. But in ODI cricket, you have that much more, breathing space, if I might put it that way. Having said that, for people like Rohit and Virat and even somebody like a Jadeja, the challenges are aplenty. We've seen in this tournament how much there is, people vying for spaces. You played four spinners. You had, two wicket-keeper batsmen, and you got somebody like Sanju Samson sitting outside. He could very well be part of this team. And so too Yashasvi Jaiswal, who's not finding a place in white ball cricket in a sense, though he's a guaranteed selection in Test cricket, and he's got a formidable record in IPL. So there are so many players vying for the same place that it's not going to be easy. Even Virat and Rohit will have to be on their toes, because the next World Cup, if that's the kind of plan to play to the next World Cup and then make it their swan song, it's still more than a year and a half away. That's a long time. So you have to sustain your form and your fitness for that long. I think that from here onwards, for some players especially, all these matches, bilateral or the competitions, will be monitored quite closely, and there's a lot of pressure on all players to perform. If you don't, there are 5 guys ready to take your place.
Yeah, and lastly, coming to one other person who takes that call, Gautam Gambhir. So he had a lot of flack when India lost that test series against New Zealand. So it's only fair you give him his flowers when he deserves it, him and his team. So now Gautam Gambhir finally has a trophy after a poor start to his coaching stint. So few words of praise for Gambhir and his support staff?
Yes, of course. I mean, look, I think also one was a little harsh in judging Gautam Gambhir only after the first test series against New Zealand, where we got whitewashed and we were in a stupor when we went to Australia, and we couldn't do much. I mean, we actually played quite well thanks to Jasprit Bumrah and some of the others, but we couldn't retain the Border Gavaskar Trophy. So that was extremely disappointing, and this came back to back. So there was a lot of pressure on Gautam also to prove his bona fides, as it were, as a coach. And this Champions Trophy, different format, there is no comparison, but in a sense kind of atones for a couple of those really disappointing test series. So in that sense, I think Gautam Gambhir will be a mighty relieved man. Just one point which I wanted to make about the kind of plush, the talent that is available for India. The pipeline is chock-a-block with high-quality young players. So compare it with New Zealand, for instance. They have the supply chain for New Zealand is very meager compared to India. Number of registered players, first-class players in New Zealand will be a minuscule compared to India. So therefore their performance is praiseworthy, which Virat Kohli actually highlighted in the post-match, conversation that he had with some of the commentators. So give New Zealand, credit where it's due, but also give credit to India, because martially, when you have got it's a torrent of talent coming in. So then to find out, pick the right people, make a selection, pick a squad of 15, 16, then a playing 11 of 11, which will consistently win. You mentioned some of the stats earlier. The one match they lost in the ODI World Cup was the final. Otherwise, they've been consistently winning all the matches in white ball cricket that they've been playing. So that's a tremendous performance where consistency is concerned. And therefore, I think that this explains why Indian cricket is so powerful and so rich. I don't mean in the financial terms, but in terms of talent.
Yeah, so there you have it, another white ball trophy for India after a barren decade or so. Now the WTC, the elusive WTC title, is the one they'll go for. But before that, in a couple of weeks, we shift our focus to the 18th edition of the IPL, where there are also a lot of stories waiting to unravel. So we'll get back to you before that. So that's it for this episode of Sports Zone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Anirudh. We'll catch up.